Hello and welcome to Inside Sports. I'm your host, Todd Blackstock. We have a fun show for you today as we'll introduce you to the new head coach of the St. Louis Surge women's basketball team. And the Washington University Bears just finished a historical baseball season, and we have head baseball coach Pat Bloom in studio to discuss the season. STL TV's Melanie Steen has a riveting story about a female wrestler, and our Inside Sports flashback features St. Louis Blues legend Bob Plager. So stay with us. Inside Sports is next. And the St. Louis Sports Commission continues to bring many events to St. Louis. The 2019 IndyCar Bommarito 500 is set to take place Saturday, August 24th at the Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway. Go to their website for ticket information. Also, the 2019 Musial Awards, presented by Maryville University, takes place November 23rd at Stiefel Theater. You don't want to miss that. The 2020 NHL All-Star Game Showcase will be played at the Enterprise Center January 24th through 26th. And we have tremendous college basketball coming up next spring with the Missouri Valley Conference's Arch Madness Tournament March 5th through 8th at Enterprise, and the 2020 NCAA Men's Basketball Championships first and second rounds will be held also at Enterprise March 19th through 21st in downtown St. Louis. A lot of great events coming to town. It's never too early to plan and get your tickets, and the St. Louis Sports Commission is all over it. With our first segment today, STL TV's Melanie Steen has a story about a female wrestler competing in a male-dominated sports. Let's take a look.
16-year-old Kayla Hughes is a junior at Alton High School who's making a name for herself on the wrestling team.
If I have a girl to wrestle, then that's just that. I mean, I'm not really worried about wrestling girls over boys or not. I just wrestle who I wrestle.
Kayla grew up surrounded by her brothers and a dad who wrestled. By the 6th grade, she decided she also wanted in on the action.
I mean, it's definitely been a family affair with wrestling and the Hughes family.
Coach Eric Roberson has been working with Kayla since she was a junior in high school. Even though Illinois schools do not offer the sport at championship level for young women, Kayla is still considered one of the female wrestlers to watch by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
Her record against girls is, I mean, she's virtually unbeaten. I think she's lost one or two that I know of against girls, but now her record against boys is not as good. But she does have some wins against some boys during the school year.
Coach tells me that bringing Kayla onto the team, a team that was previously all boys, worried him more than his team.
If you're a girl and you want to wrestle for your school, you're probably going to end up wrestling boys most of the time. But it depends on the state you're in. In Illinois, it hasn't quite caught on like it has on the Missouri side.
I think Illinois will be soon to come. They've actually been a forerunner in terms of high school wrestlers that go on and wrestle at the national level. So I think that's going to transfer and do the same for women's wrestling.
Barbara Brummett spent 18 years officiating wrestling matches all over the country, and in 2016 she was inducted into the AAU Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I've watched a lot of men over the years and a lot of young adults learn and bring to the table some incredible life skills that they get from this sport, self-determination, self-motivation, work ethic, and to have women do that as well, it's just an amazing thing.
Brummett never took up wrestling. While at Hazelwood High School, the only option for girls at that time was cheerleading or field hockey. That's her in the top left corner with her fist held high.
I was walking into their world. I was walking into their arena. But I really found that once they understood my passion and my ability, they just want someone that does a good job. And after that, it's not anything that I really ran into.
Brummett retired in 2014, around the same time she was dealing with some health problems. But she says she's feeling better now and she is planning to come out of retirement this fall. When she does, she wants to devote her energy to exclusively officiating matches for young women. I'm Melanie Steen reporting for Inside Sports.
Well, thanks, Melanie. It's pretty cool seeing the women, wrestling competitively with the boys, very riveting, and a lot of that with the Title IX has really come to the forefront. Well, our first guest today played college basketball for the Iowa Hawkeyes, where he was a 2-year starter and served as team captain. He has a tremendous basketball background and is the new head coach of the 2-time national champion St. Louis Surge. At this time, we welcome Duez Henderson to Inside Sports. Duez, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Todd. Definitely, for
Duez,
sure.
what a cool name. Is there any background to that? Who are you named after?
Not named after anyone, but it is original. My mom and one of my aunts were pregnant around the same time. I was due about 2 weeks prior to my cousin, and my aunt asked my mom what she was going to name me. It was going to be DeAndre. That aunt ended up having her child, my cousin, 2 weeks before me. His name was, he was named DeAndre. So at that point, my mom said she wanted to think of something original that no one could ever steal. And
here we are with Duez.
There we go.
Now you're from the mean streets of Detroit. The Missouri Tigers used to recruit a lot there in Detroit. There's tremendous basketball in that city, isn't there?
Yeah, it definitely is. I remember growing up, Doug Smith was one of the players that came to Missouri from Detroit that, as I was a little tyke running around local pro-ams, looking up to the big boys, he was one of the names I definitely remembered coming here. And over the years, there was a huge pipeline that came here. But yeah, Detroit was great growing up, huge sports city. Can't do anything but love it and say it's great.
Now you jumped ship. You didn't go to Michigan or Michigan State, but you ended up with a pretty big time college basketball career at Iowa. Iowa Hawkeyes, tremendous university, 2-year starter, captain. Can you maybe walk us through your career at Iowa?
Yeah, definitely. Growing up in Michigan, it was hard to say no to Michigan at the time, but they went through a coaching change. And Tom Davis and Iowa Hawkeyes came in late, and I ended up committing there. And it was weird, actually. I went through a coaching change there with Tom Davis leaving after the first year and Steve Alford coming in and playing for 3 years. But looking back on it, I would not change it for the world. Great experience. Had a chance to win a Big Ten championship, playing a couple of NCAA tournaments. Played with and against some of the best players in the country, night in and night out. So, yeah, great experience.
So your season, when your college career was over, you still wanted to keep going, and you ended up going across the pond.
Yeah, definitely. Had a chance to play professionally in Germany for 6 years, and then actually coach over there as well for a year professionally. Again, just it's one of those situations that, as I look back on it, the older I get, the more and more I realized what a great experience it was. I remember my first year in Germany, the first off weekend that we had, I was, looked at a map and I realized that was a 3-hour drive from Paris. So I'm talking to some of my teammates. I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to drive over to Paris for the weekend. Are you guys interested in going with me? And they're giving me this crazy look like, are you sure? I'm like, well, is it safe to go or not? And they're like, well, yeah, I just can't believe you would drive 3.5 hours for 1 weekend. It's like, well, in the States, that's a commute for some of the people. So, yeah, just being, over there and having a chance to experience some of those things, especially at such a young age, is something that was awesome.
Now, you're also the assistant head basketball coach at WashU under your wife, Randy. That's got to be kind of a cool family affair, because I understand you went to college together, but you didn't really connect until many years later.
Yeah, I like to say that Randy was a little bit too cool for me in college. We were there at the same time. Our careers there overlapped by 3 years, and we had a lot of the same mutual friends, but we actually did not end up meeting officially and dating until 12 years after. A really neat story, we were both back in town for an alumni charity game in Carver Hawkeye Arena on the campus. We met then, started dating. It took me a few emails to convince her to actually give me a shot. And even then, I showed up at a couple of her basketball practices as a interested coach before she finally got the hint. But yeah, it's been great. A lot of basketball in the house. We both have different approaches to the game, which I think allow us to work well together and kind of coexist in that space.
So you're now the head coach of the St. Louis Surge, and they play their games at the WashU Fieldhouse, and I know a lot of the WashU players like to go. Let's give a little preview of the 2019 Surge team. Let's talk about some of the returning players first.
Yeah, definitely. I think starting off, it's a big year for the Surge. We are now in the first year in the GWBA. and it is building to be the G League version for the WNBA. A lot of times when women are looking at professional opportunities, it's the WNBA or it's overseas or there's nothing. This league here, we're building, again, to be able to provide women that platform to continue to play in the States as well.
So I guess you got Rebecca Harris coming back, Brittany Carter, Christy Belloc, Jaleesa Butler, just to name a few.
Yeah, definitely. Big time players, and then also the great thing about those players that you named off, they all have local ties here, which not only is great for the community and the impact that we're trying to create, but it also puts people in the stands. You know, they come along with a huge following from people who have watched them play throughout their high school and college careers, and now getting a chance to watch them professionally in the
So
States.
who else is returning from last year's team?
Yeah, so in addition to those four, we also have Kelsey McClure, and the other returner is Letty Lerma,
Nice.
who played over at Bradley. Bradley, yeah.
How about that? I know you're excited about some of the new players coming on board this year as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have it's a good mix. We have 6 newcomers and 6 returners from this year coming in new this year. So it's been fun for me as a coach to come in with eyes wide, bright, and be able to mix those returning and newcomers and be able to put the best team on the floor.
And you must be excited to be able to work with Kalia Collier, the owner and GM.
Yeah.
She brought you in after a national search. How did it all go down?
Well, first of all, Kalia has been absolutely great. I've watched the search from the outside in over the past 2 years since we've been here, but now being able to see it from the inside out and see how Kalia operates, see how she runs the organization has been absolutely great. But basically, it was late March, early April. Through a mutual contact, she reached out to see if there would be interest. And I went through the interview process. It was a longer interview process. Talked to a lot of former players, talked to current players, talked to Kalia and some of the other people in management with the Surge. And they offered me the job, and I was really excited to take it.
Well, Duez, congratulations. And I can't wait to see the team this year. So excited. And tickets are available at the St. Louis Surge website. And you can go to Washington University and get tickets on game day. So
Yeah,
check it out.
can. Yeah, definitely. STLSurgeBasketball.com.
All right. Thank you so
All right,
much for joining us.
Thanks.
And let's go ahead and take a look at some of the highlights from the St. Louis Surge 2019 home opener. Our second guest today is in his 4th year as head coach for the WashU baseball team and is coming off the best year in team history. This time we welcome Pat Bloom to Inside Sports. Pat, thanks a lot for joining us. Really appreciate it. I mean, you come here with some serious pedigree. Now, you played college in Ohio, a little baseball there with Miami, Ohio, right?
As a grad student, yeah.
Grad student, and while you were there was a pretty famous NFL player that you kind of got to meet and kind of bump into here and there.
Yeah, a guy named Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben
was
Roethlisberger.
Big man on campus there at the time, and I did a lot of fantastic things there on the football field. Very good guy, and I know the Miami, Ohio contingent is proud to count him as one of their alumni for sure.
Yeah, so you're a baseball player there. You had some pretty good success, and then you went on and had a tremendous run at Wisconsin Stevens Point, and 393 wins, 4 World Series appearances, 8 WIAC titles, and 10 NCAA tournament appearances. Wow. I mean, can you discuss your career there? I mean, that's a pretty good run.
Well, we had a good run. We had some really good players, most notably a guy named Jordan Zimmerman, who's with the Detroit Tigers now.
No kidding.
Yeah, had 3 kids that got drafted there after their junior years, and 2 that are still active. So Jordan, of course, and then another young man, J.P. Fireeisen, who's in AAA with the New York Yankees. Is kind of stuck there because they seem to continue to make free agent acquisitions for their bullpen, but doing well for them as also. So yeah, we had some good players, good kids, and they can make a coach look really good.
Now, with such tremendous success there, I wouldn't say it's a lateral move, but you didn't jump to the major leagues or Division I per se, but you're coming to a wonderful university. Why'd you pick WashU, or how'd that all go down?
Well, there were a couple big factors at play. One, most notably, was family. So my wife now has family from the area here, and that played a big part in it, being able to get her closer to home. But I think that another factor was just the quality of the institution and the quality of the job. WashU's reputation speaks for itself, and the baseball program, for what it lacked in tradition, I thought it made up for in promise and opportunity. So I really looked forward to the challenge of being able to take on a new program and hopefully bring it to national prominence.
Now, you've done pretty well 3 out of the 4 years, I understand.
Yeah, we've had good runs. Our first couple of years, we were in the NCAA tournament. Last year, we had a younger team where 22 out of our 25 guys were freshmen or sophomores, but that helped to pave the way for this year's run and the quality of team that we had.
So, per se, this is supposed to be the most outstanding season in the history of WashU baseball. Can you maybe run down some of the highlights of this year's, phenomenal team?
Yeah, well, first off, we had a really good season, and we won our conference championship. We went 12-2 in our conference in the UAA, which includes schools like Emory in Atlanta, and New York University, Case Western, and Brandeis in Boston. So that was a big accomplishment for our guys. But yeah, we were ranked as high as 3rd in the country at one point in time. 34 wins to 7 losses, tied the all-time record for wins. And then we won 3 games in the postseason, which we certainly would love to say that we won more than that, because the last game was kind of a heartbreaker. But yeah, WashU baseball had never won 3 games in the postseason before. So there were a lot of high water marks for our program this year that will hopefully set the tone for an even better run in the future.
You had a couple of All-Americans, and NCAA All-Americans this year. John Howard with perhaps one of the tremendous pitching seasons, in the history of WashU. He's a very special player, and he's got a lot of neat things going on right now.
Yeah, John Howard was a tremendous pitcher for our program, not just this year, but for his 4-year career. He was outstanding last year as a junior as well, and has really been a key component of our program once our staff took over. He was an incoming freshman when we took over, and so it was integral to have guys that we could really lean on for that 4-year period. But yeah, to have a 1.01 ERA as a junior, and then that ERA go up to 1.23, I think, as a senior, those are 2 back-to-back years that are hard to replicate. And the 11 wins that he had were tremendous. And he's parlayed that into some good opportunities. He had a workout with the Cardinals last week at Busch Stadium, threw well, and then he got in a car and headed up to Bismarck, North Dakota, where he is now playing for a Northwoods League team, the Bismarck Larks, and hoping to use that opportunity to get another chance to play at the big league level, hopefully.
There's been some pretty big-time names playing that league.
Absolutely, yeah. Guys like Max Scherzer, Chris Sale, Jordan Zimmerman, the guy that I coached, played in that league. So it's a tremendous league, one of the best in the country. The Cape Cod is certainly the cream of the crop, but the Northwoods League's not far behind. So he's getting a lot of good challenge there, and we're hoping that the right eyes see him and he can take that next step to being a professional ball player.
John is a local guy as well, and there was another player that was an NCAA. I think he went to St. Louis U.
Yeah, John Brinkman is a St. Louis U alum. John Howard from Clayton High School. So both of them first-team All-Americans. First time in our school history as well to have 2 first-team All-Americans in the same year. So very proud of those guys. A lot of good baseball played here in St. Louis, as you know. So we're trying to keep some of those kids in their backyard if we can.
Sure. Now, I know in baseball there's a lot of traveling on the road in the season. WashU's got such high academic standards. How do you balance out the practice and the traveling with keeping your grades up?
Well, I think the most important variable is the kids have to be hardwired the right way. All the kids at WashU are super high achievers, but the kids that want to play competitive athletics have got to have the right type of competitive mindset. They really have got to be willing to put in the extra work. and they have to sacrifice more than some of the kids in the classroom that maybe are more focused just toward the academic side. So they do an awful lot, both on and off the field for us to represent Washington University in a way that is superb, and we're really proud of them for all that they do.
You know, in this day and age with a lot of people, you know, their attention spans are less than they were 20, 30 years ago. And baseball, sometimes people, they go to the baseball game and it's not like basketball where they score up and down, or football where they're knocking the heck out of each other. But baseball, you know, the true fans are there, but it seems like it's changing a little bit and transitioning to maybe accommodate the millennial audience or a younger audience. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a definite, I don't know if I'd call it a crossroads, but there's a definite need to make some adjustments and improvements to, I think, appeal to all that baseball offers. I think it's a great game no matter how it's played, but I think there's a lot of inactivity now in terms of the amount of prevalence of the strikeout, the walk, and the home run. So I think that at our level, you see a lot more of all elements of the game, and we don't have quite the talent, we don't have quite the power, the arm speed, all of that, but it'd be great to see the pace of play improve, of course. I think everybody would love to see that, but just to see all elements of the game return, to that people that really appreciate baseball can see all the different ways that it can be performed at a high level.
You know, I think a lot of people want to see a little faster pace of play perhaps, but it's also such a mental game. You know, you can't really rush it sometimes. You know, you might have to adjust your batting glove, or if you're not ready on the mound yet, you need a minute. But they are kind of trying to move the game along a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think that especially in this day and age, in terms of how do you maintain people's attention spans, I think that it's tough. You know, if baseball games take 3.5 to 4 hours, but I think there's certain improvements that can be made, and either way, it's a great game.
In this day and age, you know, I'm watching the Cardinals in Major League Baseball, and it seems like everybody's got the shift on all the time. Yeah. And if you're a head coach and you're down 1 run in the 7th inning or the 9th inning or whatever, and you're Matt Carpenter, or you're, say, a pull hitter, and you're up to bat, and there's not a third baseman, and you've got 2 or 3 right fielders, do you put down the sign bunt, or do you leave it up to their discretion?
Yeah, I think that's a tough call. A lot of fans at home probably thinking the same thing you are. I think it's difficult to do that at times against guys throwing 98 to 100 miles an hour.
So the bunt's not a given, is it?
It's not a given that you could get it down even if the opportunity's there. But yeah, I just think all the metrics and statistics now and the data suggest that they're better off swinging the bat. But in certain situations, the way that the game's always been played in terms of what's winning baseball, I think everyone can agree on the little things that really matter.
Before we let you go, a lot of the coaches, they're not, the assistants and things, they're not paid a whole lot of money, but they're down there, they're with the team, and they're paying their dues. Can you maybe give some props to the coaches and even some of the umpires that help make the game, you know, what it is?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, you know, from our standpoint at Washington University, we have 2 assistant coaches, Adam Rosen and Tyler Schmidt, who do a tremendous job for us. I've had so many coaches throughout the years that gave their time, their talent, and their efforts without asking a whole lot in return, and I'm forever grateful for them. I think there are all sorts of people who want to get in the game and have an opportunity to have an impact in the game, and you know, I think any sport needs those type of people, whether you're an umpire or a coach, a volunteer, or a paid assistant, to be able to help develop young men and young women in terms of not just their physical skills, but also their character traits and leadership abilities as well.
Yeah, Washington's got a great athletic director, Anthony Oswald. Chris Mitchell's very excited about you as the SID, and we're excited in St. Louis about you. You're bringing this, you know, tradition to the WashU Bears, and it's paid immediate dividends. Thank you so much. Continued success.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate it. Pat Bloom. Let's go to our Inside Sports flashback. Going back to 2006 with St. Louis Blues icon Bobby Plager. There was an incident where like some fans got involved and they were shouting obscenities and things. There was some fights in the stands, and actually some Blues players went up into the stands and got in a brawl with the fans.
Well, you were involved quite a bit with the fans when you first started, because, you know, you look at the rinks now and all that plexiglass that's around it. But when you first started in hockey, there was plexiglass. In fact, it was a screen when we first started at the end of the rinks. But there was no plexiglass, so you were close to the fans. There was things that were thrown at you. And there was a lot of things happened with the fans. But I know we're talking about, and I've written about it, the one in Philadelphia. It was a big one. It's when Al Arbor was the coach, left the ice, going down the runway, and they come down. They threw some liquid stuff on him, and they took a swing at him. And you're standing there, and you see, and that's your coach, and you don't think that's one of your players or your coach that's having a problem. And I left the ice to go and help him, and behind me was my brother Bark, and my younger brother Billy was there, and the rest, a lot of the players were in the dressing room.
Oh,
But
so
it
you
ended
guys
up,
went up to the
it
crowd
went
and
up.
took care
We
of
were up
business,
there, and it was, and we got involved. The police were involved, and it was maybe fun at the time, but it was a little scary. It was a little scary
Now,
then.
there was a young defenseman, up and coming, Bob Gassoff, having a great career. I know yourself and Barkley really helped mentor him. And then he died in a motorcycle crash at a party at Gary Younger's house. Were you there that day?
Well, in fact, it was I was there, and Bob Gassoff and his wife, and she was pregnant at the time. We went out there together, and I was out there. I drove out with the Gassoff family, and it
So you went out
was
there
a
with us. That
tough
was a
day,
tragedy, huh?
and had to go to the hospital. And when this happened, and when I was there, I had my brother wasn't out there. I called him, and Emil Francis was our general manager then. They come out, and it was a sad day, because what you said, he was just a young player that people got to see. This player was turned into a pretty good hockey player, and he was too young.
Yeah, and then Barkley passing away at an early age was, very tragic. Doug Wickenheiser, but the Blues have always been good about honoring and remembering people like that, and even yourself, you've got your number 5 honored up in the Raptors in the Scott Trade Center now. How does that make you feel?
Well, it's pretty good. We had a meeting with the Scott Trade people the other day, and they're so gung-ho, and it's a local company that's here in St. Louis, and a lot of the employees have been up at the game and the exhibition games, and they're all fired up, and it's great to see the owner. It's just a naming rights, but they're more involved with the hockey team.
Well, those Plager brothers were something else, and Bob, 3 Stanley Cup appearances in his first 3 years with the Blues. Well, congratulations to the St. Louis Blues for winning the team's first Stanley Cup. And we'll leave you with Mary Miller down at City Hall leading the charge with this year's fight song, Gloria. So long.